if Biden actually believed that his son was politicized by the Justice Department's prosecution, then why has he not fired one employee of the Justice Department? Because if he believes that there's corruption, if he believes that they're unfairly targeting individuals, he has the authority to fire those prosecutors, yet he hasn't done that.
Congressman Jason Smith, who led one of the Republican investigations into Hunter Biden, reacting to President Biden's reversal and pardoning his son. Now, Democrats are worrying this move throws open the door for President-elect Trump to issue expansive clemency. Fox News contributor Andy McCarthy is here now. Do you have any concerns, Andy?
Well, I think you're going to see more pardons, but they're going to happen before Trump gets in. The only sense I can make, Sandra, out of the structure of Hunter Biden's pardon is that President Biden has to pardon other people who were involved in what we've called the Biden influence peddling scheme that went on for so many years. Otherwise, the pardon doesn't make sense to me. I can explain why that is, just reading it if you'd like.
Yeah, please do. I mean, the concern obviously is for some what sort of pardons we might see under a Trump presidency, but there's still time left in this presidency, Andy.
Yeah, and usually, Sandra, the scandalous pardons happen when a failed president is on his way out the door. And these pardons happened early because they didn't want Hunter to get sentenced and have the judgment of conviction entered, which is what would have started to happen next week. But let me just explain. This pardon is extraordinary in that it gives him basically 11 years of immunity from everything conceivable in federal law beginning in 2014. It's obviously targeting the years that the Biden Justice Department averted its eyes from, namely 2014 through 2016, when Joe Biden was the Obama administration vice president, and when his influence was at its most valuable for people who might be willing to pay Hunter and others for it. The reason I say that there have to be more pardons is what they're obviously worried about is an investigation by the Trump Justice Department of this scheme. But by giving Hunter this pardon, what you've done is immunized him. He now has no Fifth Amendment privilege, which means if they're really worried about a Trump Justice Department investigation, they could bring Hunter into the grand jury and make him testify about everybody else who was involved in the scheme. So if what you're really worried about, which is what Biden appears to be worried about, is that kind of investigation, which looks into the things, especially 2014 through 2016, that the Biden Justice Department didn't look at, it doesn't make sense to pardon only Hunter. You'd have to pardon everybody.
What, Andy, as we leave you off here, I guess, like, what shocks you the most about all of this? Because there are some, obviously, who will say in reaction to this, well, not shocking, that as the outgoing president would choose to pardon his own son. But what really sort of stands out to you the most as we continue to cover this?
Well, I think the cynicism of Biden is the most shocking thing, because he said again and again and again that he wouldn't pardon Hunter. And I always said that was laughable, Sandra, from the first time that he said it, because if you looked at Hunter's litigation strategy in these cases, it only made sense if he knew he was going to get a pardon. But when I say the cynicism is what backs me up, it goes on to this day. I mean, even after that history of lie after lie, today they come out, or they began to come out on Sunday, saying that Hunter was selectively prosecuted and there was prosecutorial misconduct in connection with his investigation. All of that prosecution was play acting. They tried to get rid of the Hunter case. They tried to make it disappear, and they only prosecuted him because they knew in the end his father would pardon him if all else failed. But as the guest that you played the clip from before said, he hasn't fired anyone if he really believed there was prosecutorial indiscretion here.
Jonathan Turley says President Biden cemented his legacy as a liar in chief, as his pardon of son Hunter culminates years of lying to the public about his knowledge and intentions in the influence peddling scandals surrounding his family. Meanwhile, special counsel David Weiss objecting to the motion to dismiss Hunter's case. The GW law professor and Fox News contributor Jonathan Turley heard us talking about him and scrambled to the Zoom and joins us now. So, Jonathan, first off, on David Weiss saying, I don't think we should go ahead and follow through on the pardon. We should follow through in the case. Your thought?
I think it's just positively nuts. Of course, he should dismiss the case. I think it's an effort to try to scrub away the stain of this case for Weiss. You know, he was at the center of that sweetheart deal. He wanted to give the Bidens precisely what the president just gave in this pardon, a sweeping immunity for not just crimes he was accused of, but other unnamed crimes. He's not going to scrub that away. And saying that I'd like to stay in this fight a little bit longer is unlikely to impress these judges. You know, this is not here to redeem yourself. It's the question is there a case to be tried? And the answer is no, there's not.
You also believe that Hunter Biden might not be out of trouble yet. Why?
Well, you know, the president clearly is hoping that he's given him this sweeping protection, and that includes unnamed crimes. Quite literally, there, you know, Hunter Biden could have, you know, 6 heads in a duffel bag in his basement, and this would cover it as long as he committed those murders during this 10-year period. It would not protect him, by the way, from state charges. But it's a sweeping pardon that we haven't seen really the likes of since Nixon. It's pretty unprecedented in that respect. The problem is that Hunter could be called before Congress. Congress has committees that are still looking into the influence peddling scandal involving millions and millions of dollars. He could be called to testify. Last time he did that, the House accused him of being misleading, even false in his testimony. If he commits perjury again, it's a new crime, and this pardon will not have an impact, and he could face additional charges.
You also write that he might not have to pay all his taxes back. And number 2 is there are so many questions. What'd you do with the money in China? What'd you do with the money you got from Moscow Mayor? How did you get the money from the Romanian billionaire? What about Carlos Slim? Is he ever gonna have to pay taxes on this or answer the question, what did you do to earn that?
Well, I think he should be called to Congress and called to give a full account. We have a lot of questions. You know, the Bidens have been notorious for nepotism and influence peddling. I've been writing about them from before Biden was vice president. They are the goats of this favorite form of corruption in D.C., which is influence peddling. And this pardon really sealed that status. I mean, we've never seen anything like them. I mean, they have done an amazing job in avoiding any responsibility, accountability, or even answers. Congress can demand those answers.
Would be nice. I think he could always take the 5th, I guess. Is there any doubt in your mind that Jim Biden and the whole family gets a pardon? The brother is next?
Well, I mean, this seems to be a free fall for the Biden administration in terms of ethics. I mean, this is the final corruption, in my view, of the Biden administration. They have really untethered themselves from any principles. So nothing would surprise me at this point.
Well, a couple of things. One is I'm a dad, so I get the dad piece as a father. You know, I'd do anything to protect my children, my son, my daughter. You know, I suspect you're the same. All of us, you know, I think feel that way. But as somebody who, you know, cares about public service and reestablishing trust and credibility, it's, as I mentioned, it's a setback. It doesn't help those of us who are really trying hard to get people to, you know, believe in government and elected officials again.
You know, you're a great dad, it sounds like. It depends on the day with my kids, Congressman, but I digress. I see what you're saying, and your heart's in the right place. I just wonder how this could boomerang on the president, seeing as he's said this so many times, and everyone fully aware he was saying it as a dad, then as a dad now. Do you think he was just stringing us along?
I have no idea. I mean, I think it sounds like he was home or with his family on Thanksgiving, and you know, that's got to be rough for a couple of days of being hounded by your son saying, hey, I want you to do this. As a dad, I think that's a tough position. Look, I treat everyone the same. I didn't like when Trump did this, when he pardoned you know, people who were close to him or, you know, family members. You know, he pardoned Kirshner's father, right? And then now Kirshner's going to be the ambassador to France. I don't think people like it when politicians do this, period.
But doesn't this have a sort of a unique spin to it, Congressman, in that this is like a, you know, an all-encompassing pardon. It goes all the way back almost 10 years to, obviously before, the association with Burisma, of course, the Ukrainian energy concern. So it wipes out a lot of potential sins that could still come up.
Yeah, so that is unique to this, and I think that's makes it even more problematic. I mean, one of the questions that the White House should be wrestling with is if this is about ending political retribution and the nonsense around people using positions of power, the justice system to go after their political enemies, pardon a whole bunch of people. Put a bunch of people that might be on both sides, that might be, targets of political retribution, because I do think the American people want to be done with it, whether it's Biden doing it or if Trump starts to mess around with this stuff too. I just think people want them focused entirely on them, which, seems pretty simple.
As expected, not surprised and disappointed.
He has to. If he doesn't pardon his son, he is directly implicated.
It's his son. He wants to keep him safe, especially we don't know what's coming.
It confirms a lot of what I've heard. He's a liar. And that was just another one of his lies.
Noah, what's the impact on Joe Biden's presidency, on his legacy of this major decision?
Well, the impact on his legacy, I think, will be very significant, but it's going to take some time to settle out. This is not registering as a seismic political event, only, as you saw in those reactions, only because everybody had already processed this before. Throughout you can go look at the polling. Throughout the Hunter Biden saga, voters did not believe the president. They didn't believe that Hunter Biden was anything other than guilty of the charges against him. They thought he was getting favorable treatment from the public, from the public sector, from the government. When he was convicted, they approved of the conviction, and they told CNN pollsters that they thought Joe Biden personally benefited from his son's corruption. I would guarantee you that most of those voters who thought that, which is a majority, didn't believe that Joe Biden wouldn't do anything other than pardon his son after having festooned himself with all the political liabilities associated with his son to hold him so close. It's a very human response, but it is nevertheless also a corrupt response. When the public comes to regard the pardon power as an instrument of corruption, say, oh, well, of course, obviously, the president is going to forego his responsibility to protect the rule of law and protect his family, inoculate them against the consequences of their own actions. Deeply pernicious. This is the worst kind of lie, the lie that the liar knows is a lie and that the recipient of the lie understands is a lie, and it just washes over them because they believe that's what politicians do and that's what they're supposed to do. It erodes civic and social trust at a time when we have very little of both to spare.
And what's the impact on the incoming president's pardon environment?
Well, listen, precedents beget other precedents. That's why we should be very leery of setting precedents. One of the things that Joe Biden's defenders have retreated to is the notion that, well, Donald Trump's pardons were also really suspect, and he pardoned his son-in-law's father, Charles Kushner. And so, this is just an example
After
of
he had
that.
already done time in jail, I believe.
It's not the veracity of the narrative that matters. What matters is that they think, okay, well, the terms of engagement were expanded under this president, so we're going to expand them a little bit further, which will beget more expansion. This is an arms race that doesn't end. And until we get a president who exemplifies some propriety in office, then we're going to continue to see these precedents expanded in ways that the public will eventually regard as deeply corrupt. And the public will get what it wants.
You're so right. And it's sad, really, to watch people say, well, I just figured this would happen. It's his son.
Very sad.
I mean, that is such a, it would be a noble thing, hard, but to say, you know what, he's going to have to do a little time here, and we'll see what kind of it. Maybe that will, leave a big impact on him.
More Democrats are criticizing President Biden for pardoning his son. Many are pointing to President Biden promising to build his administration on an independent justice system, and he spent months pledging his son's legal fate. Well, the president ended up interfering in that process. Democrats offering at least some criticism include Colorado Governor Jared Polis, Representatives Greg Landsman, Seth Moulton, Greg Stanton, and Marie Gulsenkamp-Perez, and Senators Gary Peters, Michael Bennet, and Peter Welsh, among others.
I think it will become really hard for us if, let's say, President-elect Trump decides to pardon the January 6th folks. Now what do we say? I mean, it becomes really hard because, folks will say, well, President Biden did the same exact thing.
Despite his presidential pardon, Hunter still has some work for his lawyers. They're petitioning federal courts in Delaware and California to dismiss and clear the indictments against him. Just a few hours ago, the judge in Delaware refused to wipe those charges from Hunter's record, only ordering that, pursuant to the executive grant of clemency signed by President Joseph R. Biden Jr., all proceedings in this case are hereby terminated, not dismissed. Hunter's legal team has a similar petition with the judge in California. We're still waiting on that decision. Several thousand miles away, Hunter's father ignored questions on the pardon while traveling in Angola.
Mr. President, why did you change your mind in pardoning your son?
President Biden is scheduled to return here to the White House Thursday.
Axios writes this: Hunter Biden pardon deepens Dems' identity crisis by pardoning Hunter on gun and tax convictions or any other crimes he may have committed between January 1st, 2014, December 1st, 2024. Some Democrats believe Biden has sacrificed a moral high ground that's been foundational to the party's identity in the Trump era. Other Democrats see that framing as hopelessly naive and have posed the blunt question, what's the point of holding a moral high ground when America just elected a convicted felon? Again, that's Axios. Right up. Megan, what do you think in the reaction, especially with Democrats, on that pardon a day later?
Yeah, I think that both of those statements are true in Axios' piece. I think that there are a group of Democrats who do think that we ceded the moral high ground here, and I think that I can understand why folks are frustrated on that because the president was saying he wasn't going to pardon him and then ended up pardoning him. But again, Joe Biden's not going to lose another son. He already lost 2 children. So I think that, there's some facts there. But I also do think that we are in an identity crisis and trying to figure out where we're going from here. But I think that the Democrats need to focus on moving forward, finding a new generation of leadership here and moving more to the middle. I think that that's one thing that the electorate told us in the election, that they are much more moderate than the Democratic Party is leaning and behaving. And so I think that is where the Democrats need to do some introspective looking here. And, you'll see that on the House when they're looking at some of their new chairs at their chairs for their different conferences that they're looking at. So I do think that the Democrats, you will see a new, younger leadership moving forward.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.